Drake panted heavily, body burning from wounds and exertion. Focused as he was, he didn't register the sound of the explosion behind him. He left a trail of blood as he ran, unable and unwilling to examine his poor physical condition. But still, he ran, deeper and deeper into the bunker, passing the fallen forms of fellow humans. The lights flickered the deeper he went. Somehow the electrical system had been damaged, whether during the initial attack or sabotaged afterwards. Drake turned a corner, feet sliding out from beneath him as he slipped on a puddle of blood. Slamming into the floor, he was swallowed by darkness as the lights finally flickered out. He lay there, strength sapped out from his earlier bloodlust and injuries. The dull thud of gunfire and squeal of blaster fire reaching him through the floor. He tried, desperately, to push himself to his feet, but his hand slid out from under him, making him belly flop back onto the ground. Despair washed over him as he clawed at the ground, pulling himself forward inches at a time. He had to save them. He had to stop the Geknosions running rampant through his home. He needed to do something. Anything. But he could barely keep crawling forward. Drake broke, beginning to cry. They'd come so far, fought so hard. It couldn't end like this, but it seemed it would. Weakly, he pounded the smooth Duracrete floor with his fist, tears dripping down his face as he did. He'd thought himself invincible, untouchable, because he could bend Durasteel with his bare hands and fight like a man possessed. But here he lay, one floor away from being able to help. He'd failed. "Mister?" a timid voice from his side asked, shaking Drake back to the present. "I'm scared, mister." Drake turned his head in the kid's direction, blinking his tears away. "Are we gonna be okay, mister?" Someone else had asked him the same question, not 30 minutes ago. Are we gonna make it, sir?" He told Randall it would all be okay. He'd promised it, but he hadn't been able to keep that promise. Randall had died without him being able to do anything about it. Like Randall, he'd made a promise to those below, that he'd save them. All of them. Even if it was the last thing he did. Breathing raggedly, Drake planted his palms against the floor. He couldn't fail now. He wouldn't, even if it killed him. "We're going," he grunted, body burning in protest as he pushed himself onto one knee. "To be all right. Stay here. I'll be back," he growled, sword scraping against the ground as he slowly picked it up. Standing with great effort, Drake stumbled towards the final stairwell, clutching the bleeding wound in his side where a plasma bolt had torn him open. He doggedly shouldered the manual door open before starting to stumble down the stairs. The emergency lights flickered on as he reached the landing, bathing everything in a soft, red glow. "I'm coming," he panted, shouldering the heavy door open. "Just hold on a little longer, please." Remen's head lolled back. He felt terrible. One of those green bolts had hit him in the stomach. With his unoccupied hand, he pumped his shotgun against the ground, before weakly poking it over the makeshift barricade. The gun roared, but it did nothing to stop the volleys of plasma arcing over their heads. Destrier dropped down next to him, cursing his empty gun. Breathing heavily, Remen peeked through a gap in the barricade at dozens of rapidly pulsing lights in the darkness. Managing a sad chuckle, he stated, "I guess this is the end. I'm glad I got to meet you, Destrier." Muscular Cyclops sighed, voice weak. It seems so. At least, we die free, right?" The bark of a high-powered rifle made the two flinch, the sound followed by a string of curses from Kaz. They'd sealed the ones who couldn't fight in the exit airlock to keep them safe, but now they were running out of ammo. Remen was running out of blood. Remen nodded sadly as the emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything red and illuminating the polished power armor of their assailants. At least we die free. Remen sighed hopelessly, glancing over at Cassius as the mute slammed a fresh mag into his Block 600. That was his last. The two caught each other's eye and shared a look of acknowledgement. The mute gave Remen a smile and clicked a button on his text reader, the voice overly cheery for their situation. It was a good run. The squeal of blaster fire stopped, a gruff voice shouting down the hall. Come out with your hands in the air! Face your death with dignity! Remen sighed, peeking back through the gap as darkness began to slowly encroach on his vision. Then, behind the Geknosian mercs, the stairwell door shunted open. A bloody corpse stumbled through, holding a sword. No, not a corpse. Drake? Remen whispered in awe. The young man was covered in wounds that should be lethal, but there he was, eyes defiant, sword glinting in the red light, smock soaked in crimson. The mercenaries turned upon hearing the door slam open. One cocked their head to the side as they looked at Drake. The young man limped forward, breathing raggedly as he stared hopefully at the barricade. I'm here, he panted, a genuine, relieved smile on his face. Are you guys okay? Remen felt his eyes get moist as he painstakingly raised his hand above the barricade in a thumbs up. Drake looked like he was about to cry. Thank the Reaper. I was so scared. A plasma blaster squealed, and Drake stumbled to the side. A new wound blasted open on his shoulder. Taking his hand off of the wound in his side, Drake switched his sword into it, blood dripping from the wound as Drake stared at the Geknosian who'd shot him. You really shouldn't have done that. Drake stared at the featureless helmet of the Geknosian who'd shot him. He was exhausted, hurt, and running out of steam. But he wasn't done yet. Something was welling up inside him. Something primal. Something ancient. Like the roar of a cornered animal, it thrummed with strength born of desperation. No matter how tired he was, how hurt, he couldn't let his friends die. Not while he still drew breath. A half-dozen green suns formed at the end of the Geknosian blasters, aimed at his chest and face. If they made impact, he wouldn't survive. The thrum in his body built, reaching his throat as the Geknosians tensed their fingers, ready to release the charged bolts. Then, words were spoken without thought. Folly of the Furies. Heat washed over Drake, the intensity of the plasma bolts singeing his hair as they harmlessly arced around him. They'd missed by centimeters, splashing against the far wall, making the metal glow with heat. The thrumming power within had faded, but Drake felt renewed. A flame kindled in his chest by the heat of his desperation. His limits surpassed. Drake stepped forward, arm lifting towards the ceiling as red light glinted off his sword's blade. Vision tunneling, he brought the blade down with all his might. Circuitry popped, blood and hydraulic fluid spurting onto the wall as Drake's sword slipped into a gap between the armor's pauldron and helmet. The blade bit deep, stopping only as it encountered the top of the chest plate. Kicking the Geknosian off his sword, he ducked a plasma bolt before thrusting his sword beneath the chin of a Geknosian's helmet. Drake twisted his body to the side, shielding himself with the dead Geknosian, as sustained plasma fire lit up the hallway around him. With a defiant scream, Drake used all his might to heft the powered armored corpse and charge forward. He kicked the corpse off his sword and into a surprised Geknosian, knocking them down. Twisting, he whipped his sword out, gashing another Gekko's throat out as his sword effortlessly found the seam in the armor. A feeling of elation filled his chest as he slammed his shoulder into Gekko's chest, pushing them into their squad mates' bolts. They screamed in shock and pain as their armor was superheated, with them inside. Drake stepped into a swing, aiming for the blaster of the nearest Geknosian mercenary. However, the currently burning alive Geknosian's kicking legs knocked his own out from under him, and he was sent sprawling. Landing hard on his back, he looked up into the dozen or so emitters that now stared down at him. Drake would have cursed, but his heavy, ragged breathing forbade it. The fall had sapped what little strength he had left. Drake readied himself for death. A sharp whistle cut the air, and the Geknosians hesitated for a split second. The rapid bark of a handgun echoed throughout the hall as hardened durasteel projectiles ripped the Geknosians' helmets open in a spray of cold gore. Silence filled the hall, broken only by the whimpering of the badly burnt Geknosian on the floor. Drake panted heavily, a laugh beginning to bubble up in his chest as an all-too-familiar, all-too-polite, artificial female voice insulted the dead and dying Geknosians. "This is why you don't turn your back on the enemy, you fools!" Drake groaned as he pushed himself into a sitting position, weakly scooting up against the wall. Leaning his head back against the cold durasteel, Drake glanced over at Cassius. The mute was shaking with adrenaline, but he was smiling as he pressed a button on his text reader. "You okay, you monster?" Drake managed a weak chuckle, closing his eyes to rest a little before speaking. "I'll be fine. Is everyone else okay?" Nodding, Cassius typed up a message, concern and grief scrunching his face. "We lost a lot of fighters. Remen's gut shot, and we're out of ammo. The non-combatants are safe in the airlock. Is it safe to go back up?" Drake was about to give the affirmative, but the soft sound of radio static from one of the corpses caught his attention. "You fuckers better be dead or dying if you aren't responding, or I'll kill you myself! An old acquaintance of mine decided to exit the world with a bang. Probably hoped to take me with him. But as you can hear, he failed. I've called in reinforcements. These fuckers won't get away with this." Drake was overcome by both grief and rage in an instant. Brown had sacrificed himself so he could save the others. Somehow. He knew it without a doubt. The rage quickly burnt away the grief. Brown, in a way, had sacrificed himself to save them all, but that damned general had survived and was calling in reinforcements. He was spitting on that kind old lizard's grave. The fires of rage grew cold with malice. Drake growled and shoved himself to his feet, surprising Cassius with the speed of the action. Drake growled through clenched teeth. "Stay here. Tend to the injured. It's not over yet." Drake began to march towards the stairwell, an old man's weakened voice giving him pause. "Drake?" He turned his head, looking Remen in the eyes as the old man used Destrier as a crutch. "What is it, Remen?" The old man gave him a pained grimace. "Let us help." Drake forced an encouraging smile, shaking his head. "Focus on staying alive, Remen. I started this fight." He marched forward, cold, fiery hatred building in his chest. It may be stupid to face reinforcements and a Gallic in his condition, but I'll be damned if I don't finish it. Drake ripped the stairwell door open, bare feet making soft slapping sounds as he climbed the stairs. This wasn't about freedom anymore. They had attacked his home, killed his friends, and pissed on his allies' ultimate sacrifice. His fight wasn't just about freedom anymore. It was about revenge.